In 1918, the last year of World War I, the world had changed a lot because of machine warfare. One big thing that came out of that time was made for bombing, the Airco DH4, made by Geoffrey de Havilland and the aircraft manufacturing company. It was a really important British bomber that carried 2 people and flew during the day. But when we talk about getting ready to bomb something back then, it's not just about the planes or how they did it. It's also about what was going on in the heads of these young guys who were dealing with new technology and facing death. The mission started way earlier than when the engines even turned on. The pilots and observers met in the morning for a briefing at the squadron hut, probably at some muddy field in France. An officer would point out the day's target on a simple wall map. It could be a railway, ammo storage, or enemy guns. They picked targets that would hurt the Germans' ability to fight. The aircrews got told about the weather, where the enemy was, and any news about anti-aircraft guns. They didn't know much for sure because it was hard to talk to each other, and the spies didn't always have good info. Still, they had to go do their job with what they had. Back then, the DH4 was quite the plane. Fast, steady, and it could fly so high that German fighters had trouble keeping up. It usually ran on a Rolls-Royce Eagle engine and could hit over 100 miles per hour, which was super fast for 1918. It had a pilot and a guy in the back who worked a Lewis gun, dropped bombs, and took pictures from the air. But keep in mind, these guys were sitting out in the open, exposed to the weather and getting shot at. Way up there, you were right in the thick of it, hanging in a wooden frame covered in fabric, trusting your life to some pretty new technology. The ground crews were the unsung heroes of every raid. They were super skilled but always swamped, and they got to work way before anyone else, doing things like looking over the engine, making sure the fuel and oil lines were good, trying out the radio, if there even was one, and confirming that everything moved like it should. They carefully attached the bombs under the plane. This wasn't something they took lightly. It needed them to be careful, focused, and aware of how risky it was. But here's the thing, these crews were usually young guys, maybe 18 to early 20s, but they had really big jobs that could decide if a mission was a win or loss, or if the pilots they worked with made it back home safe. Once the crew got on board, the engine's hum would turn into a roar. The pilot and observer talked with hand signals or yelled snippets that the wind swallowed because they didn't have fancy intercoms back then. The raid didn't start with a bang, but kind of a serious purpose. Many wrote in their diaries about waiting on the grass runway, that mix of fear and duty before speeding into the sky. And this is where it gets psychological. That mix of fear, courage, and doing what you have to is something that goes beyond that time in history. It shows what people deal with when they face anything really scary. The DH4s would meet up high in the sky, flying close together. This wasn't just for looks, it was how they stayed alive. One by itself was an easy target. But a group of 10 or 12, all able to shoot at anyone who came close, was much harder to beat. Even when they flew together, they weren't totally safe. Anti-aircraft guns, which the crews nicknamed Archie, would send explosions into the air around them, while enemy planes would hang back, waiting for someone to fall out of line. As the group got close to the target, staying focused was super important. The pilots needed to keep the planes steady. The people watching had to get the bomb sights ready, check how high they were flying, and drop the bombs at just the right time. Even if things got bumpy, the enemy started shooting, or something broke down on the plane. This is where you really see what war is all about. Young guys had to make really tough choices in crazy situations, choices that could change everything for everyone. Even if the plane made it through the drop, getting back wasn't easy. Problems like busted engines, hurt crew, or bad weather could turn the return flight into a real nightmare. When the crews landed on those bumpy fields in northern France, they were super tired and thankful to be back on solid ground. They had survived, at least for today. That feeling of how fragile life is, that thin line between living and dying, is something you see again and again in what they wrote about their experiences. Getting ready for a bombing run in 1918 with an Airco DH4 wasn't just another military thing. It was like stepping into the early days of a scary new kind of war. Sure, it needed new tech, but it also needed people who could handle a lot. And think about this, history isn't some far-off idea. It's made up of what happened to people. People who were breakable, made mistakes, and were brave. They dealt with stuff they didn't ask for, but they had to deal with it anyway.